Islamic terrorist attacks in Minnesota and New York City and in New Jersey. These attacks and many others were made possible because of our extremely open immigration system. From 9/11 to San Bernardino, we have seen how failures to screen who is entering the United States puts all of our citizens, everyone in this room, at danger. My opponent has the most open borders policy of anyone ever to seek the presidency.
Donald Trump saying immigration security is national security in Florida just moments ago as suspected terrorist Ahmad Khan Rahami apprehended after a shootout where multiple shots were exchanged in Linden, New Jersey. This after a weekend of dangerous terror attacks shook the nation. This is Risk and Reward. I'm Elizabeth McDonald in for Deirdre Bolton. The U.S. was rocked by violence this weekend, an ISIS-backed stabbing rampage in Minnesota, and separately devices detonating in both New Jersey and New York. My colleague Adam here is on the ground in New York City with the very latest. Adam.
And a good afternoon to you, E. Mac. Let's begin with the man who is in custody. We have video of him on a hospital stretcher. His name is Ahmad Khan Rahami. He is 28 years old. He was apprehended this morning after a shootout with police officers in Linden, New Jersey. Now, we're broadcasting live from West 23rd Street here in Chelsea, a portion of essentially southern Midtown Manhattan. And it was here on Saturday night that one of the pressure cooker devices exploded, injuring 29 people and causing some damage on the street. It was actually the second explosion on Saturday because, as you have said, there was an explosion earlier Saturday morning on the Jersey Shore just before a charity marine race was supposed to take place. That race, of course, was delayed because of the explosion in which nobody was hurt. Then fast forward to Saturday night. After the explosion here on West 23rd Street, there was another device found on West 27th Street, and then Sunday evening there were 5 pipe bombs found in a backpack at the train station in Elizabeth, New Jersey. How does all of this tie together? Well, the suspect, Mr. Rahami, actually lived about a mile from the train station in New Jersey, and his fingerprints, according to sources talking to Fox News, were found on the device, bomb found on West 27th Street. But the question remains, were there other people involved? Mayor Bill de Blasio from New York City had this to say. Mr. de Blasio went on to say that it is believed that the police are looking for no one else, just the one individual who is now in custody, Mr. Rahami. And again, he has not been formally charged yet. He's at the hospital in Newark. And the question about others being involved, there were 5 men who had been apprehended by the FBI, taken into custody Sunday night. But those 5 men were released without any charges. They are not considered suspects.
All right.
Emac, back to you.
Thank you, Adam Shapiro. A new Homeland Security report saying more than 850 illegal immigrants from countries of concern to our national security have been mistakenly granted citizenship. Here are the presidential candidates weighing in on refugees earlier today.
We've been weak. Our country's been weak. We're letting people in by the thousands and tens of thousands. I've been saying you got to stop it. You got to. I mean, just last week, Obama said more than 100,000 people are going to come in from Syria. He's letting more people in. 100,000. Hillary Clinton wants to increase what he's let in. He's letting thousands and thousands of people. They don't know. They can't be properly vetted. There's no way. I spoke to law enforcement, the best people in law enforcement. They say there is no way of vetting these people.
Let us remember, there are millions and millions of naturalized citizens in America from all over the world. There are millions of law-abiding, peaceful Muslim Americans.
We've got founder and president of the American Islamic Forum for Democracy, Dr. Zuhdi Jasser, joins me now. Good to see you, Doctor.
Nice to be with you.
You know, the 858 let in, the discrepancies weren't caught because their fingerprints were missing from the paper databases. What does this tell you about Democrats and other officials saying, you know what, we've got really terrific vetting? Donald Trump doesn't think so.
Well, I think, Liz, it just speaks to the fact that we have reliance on a complicated system that is basically all technocrat and not ideological. The system is broken, whether it's Somali refugees or immigrants. By the way, many of these attackers are naturalized citizens, so the radicalization is happening years after they get here. Why? Because we continue this whack-a-mole program of simply looking at the end point, which is violence, and not looking at really the privilege of coming to America, which is embracing our ideas, embracing our national identity of a social contract of believing in freedom and liberty versus believing in the theocratic Islamic State. As long as we don't counter violent Islamism, we're going to continue to have this broken immigration system. And it's broken not only because of the technocratic issues, which are absurd, but broken because we have no ideological strategy to vet them.
You know, Donald Trump speaking in Florida moments ago, and he's essentially saying, we're going to stop it. We're going to protect Americans. It's not enough to say this is bad after the fact, after a bombing or an attack occurs. What do you make of that?
You know, listen, I have even personal interests involved with family in Aleppo. I'd like to get out and have seen America like my family saw it, as the land of freedom. And even having said that, I don't want our country to engage in national fratricide where we just let anybody in. It's a privilege to come here. And it's not just about immigration, Liz. Our security clearances, folks who work for DOD, for Homeland Security, in NSA and others. I hope Muslim police officers and others are vetted for the ideology of Islamism and the belief in the Sharia state. Not just ISIS, but any Islamic State mentality is incompatible with American security, be it about immigration or security clearances. And yet to this day, the administration, government, and others do not want to identify the threat because of political correctness, and it puts us on a path towards national fratricide.
You know, Donald Trump is gaining on Hillary Clinton because this seems to be and is a defining issue for many voters out there. National security. Donald Trump stressing the words, Dr. Jasser, saying the words radical Islam earlier today. Take a listen.
These are sick, evil people that want to destroy this country. And the way we coddle them and the way we're afraid to say anything, and we're afraid to say what the problem is and who they are, and they don't want to say radical Islam. They don't want to talk about radical Islamic terrorism. Obama won't even say the words, neither will Hillary Clinton.
You know, it's still a mystery to a lot of people out there, Dr. Jasser. You've pointed out the 9/11 Commission report used the term Islamic radical terrorism about 7 times. I don't understand, and voters out there don't understand, why won't Democrats acknowledge this term?
Because the focus of their life and their entire axis is not about American national unity, but about partisan politics. And they want to check the box that they protect Muslim minorities for their vote, can vote for Democrats, and will protect it, the grievance groups. When in fact, as we see with the New York bomber, the grievance groups are actually part of the radicalization process, as we see his family was suing the federal government. We see this in the San Bernardino shooters and others, that the grievance groups actually radicalize our faith community. But more importantly, the narrative, the true narrative of a battle of ideologies is about defending freedom against theocracy. And until you name that, the precursors, these guys don't go to bed normal Americans and wake up the next day violent extremism. The precursors is theocratic Islam, Sharia state, jihad, Salafism. And until we identify those things, you can't counter them and hold Homeland Security accountable for all those precursors that exist for years. And this is why we're completely losing this whack-a-mole program.
Yeah, Dr. Jasser, President Obama, Hillary Clinton, you know, to your point, saying making this a religious war, you know, it's exactly what the terrorists want. Take a listen.
We cannot let ourselves be divided by religion, because that's exactly what the terrorists want.
They want to use that to recruit more fighters to their cause by turning it into a religious conflict.
Are you buying that, Dr. Jasser?
Well, no, because what I'm not buying is that when they don't declare that there's a problem within the House of Islam, we're not saying that to say that there's a problem within means you're alienating all Muslims, but actually you're taking sides for those who share our values, and you're taking sides against the theocrats. I would tell you that President Obama's position is a bigoted position of low expectations. When Prime Minister Trudeau in Canada or President Obama last February go to a mosque that separates women and men and has inherent ideology of misogyny, that tells my community that, oh, we don't care what you do in the mosque, how misogynist, how 13th century you are, as long as you vote Democrat and you say that you're against violent extremism, that's all that matters. But those ideas are precursors for radicalization, and we have to hold my community accountable to the same values.
Dr. Jasser, Donald Trump saying, the real war on women is being waged by Islamic radical terrorists. And, he's saying essentially that Hillary Clinton's not bringing that up. Also, the brutal slaughter of gays and people who, the Islamic terrorists just don't like. And who's calling out Hillary Clinton? Watch this. I want you to take a listen to this, Dr. Jasser. It's an opinion piece from the Jerusalem Post saying, essentially, can you imagine Winston Churchill or FDR refusing to identify the Nazis by name for fear of bolstering their recruiting? Clinton even went so far as to say that jihadists are praying for Trump to win as if she were privy to jihadi prayers. What complete nonsense. What do you make of that?
Well, again, I think the reality is the West is finally starting to wake up that our national identity, Muslims who believe in Americanism and in being British and being German, are the main solution. And we have to engage them, and they're only going to be engaged when we counter political Islam and the Islamic State, be it ISIS, Saudi Arabia, Iran, etc. So I'm waiting for the candidates to talk about freedom and democracy against those Islamic states. And yes, identify the enemy clearly, because you can't engage. I don't have a seat at the table, Liz, unless we identify political Islam as the problem, because reformists are irrelevant if you just say, well, Islam is not a problem, and you just let the global establishment of Islamic theocracy speak for us.
Thank you, Dr. Jasser.